feel like Kobe in the fourth quarter.
This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast. We're brought to you by Prize Picks, coming at you Friday morning. It's January 23rd, and coming up on today's show, we have a 4-game losing streak to discuss. This is only the second time in the last 3 seasons the Wolves have had a 4-game losing streak. 2 seasons ago, they never lost 4 in a row because they never even lost 3 in a row. And then last season, they had that 1 4-game losing streak. It was the 4 games leading up to Thanksgiving 2024. If you remember that, they had the players only meeting after that 4th straight loss. So it has been 109 games, 432 days since this team last lost 4 in a row, which is actually pretty impressive in and of itself. But we're right here, 4 losses in a row, and there's a lot going on, I think, beneath the surface as to what's behind those 4 losses that we'll get into today. The defense has really fallen off of late. Looked it up this morning. Over the last 2 weeks, they're 22nd in defensive rating. The bench outside of Naz Reid has very, very little offensive juice. And then just the energy has been inconsistent, I would say, across the board from the players who have been playing. So I got Kyle Tighe here. We'll get into it. Hopefully it won't be all like losing, terrible. But it is 4 losses in a row. Kyle, what is your concern level with this team right now?
Oh, damn. I was going to say an 8.5, which is like losing. Yeah. My concern level is like an 8.5, but it's also not like burn the building down, fire everybody, trade everybody yet. But it's I can't take victory laps on things because I'm wrong about so many things we talk about. But on this one, we are kind of back to what I've been saying all season about, and we're going to talk about this later, but like 6.5 good players. Not always closing with the right guys. No development from, I think it's pretty clear Ant's taken another leap this season, like when the clutch time stuff, although that's regressed a little bit. Maybe we can talk about the Bulls game a little bit. Like I didn't love the shots he took late in the game. Obviously his defense was just non-existent. Jaden's taken a leap. Rudy's back to defensive player of the year stuff, but it's all the same characters. And it's like, well, at some point, can we get more from a Jalen Clark, a Terrence Shannon Jr., Rob Dillingham? So you wake up this morning, you're in the play-in. I don't really care about the standings. I don't really want to talk about it. Like you can win 4 in a row and get back up. There's a lot of teams in the West right now that are struggling. Like the Rockets, Rockets fans want to fire Ime, and the Lakers have no athleticism, and it's just kind of a hodgepodge in the West. But they're doing the issue. They have the issues, Dane, that I've kind of thought they were going to have all season. And we're 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks now from the trade deadline. And after that Bulls game, after that Jazz game, hell, even after the Spurs or those first 2, the Spurs and the Rockets, I always thought it was weird in the moment. Like we were like, oh, they played really well, down guys. It's like, okay, but those are big games that they're losing. I know Ant had a career high, but it's like, we can't make a wish this when they lose to teams that they're fighting for playoff position for. So I think this is a pretty good kind of palate cleanser for the front office to be like, hey, we have to do something. I know you talked with Britt the other day, whether you admit that Rob Dillingham was just a mistake and you cut ties early, or you just gamble on getting rid of a Terrence Shannon Jr. or a Jalen Clark and maybe they grow elsewhere, or you just, and this is a big one for me, cut ties with a guy who is so important to this franchise behind the scenes and has been such a big straw that stirs the drink in Mike Conley, but he's given him nothing. The bench has given him nothing outside of Naz Reid. So yeah, I wake up this morning on Friday and I'm like, there are major concerns that no longer lead towards should they make a trade within the next 2 weeks. It's like they have to make a trade if they want to do anything come April and May.
So I want to talk about the trade and the have to make a trade in a minute. I do think if we're having that conversation and we're saying the 6.5 guys, we need to talk about what type of player. Like it can't just be, I think it's our responsibility to not just be saying they need to make a trade. Mm-hmm. Even if we're feeling that, like what is that? And I've kind of flip-flopped around on that. But I think that's the important question. You talk about the front office, like it's not just change for change's sake. I mean, that will probably help some, but I think of what you're talking about, of what we're all talking about, of addressing some of these issues, like the second unit scoring and the defense and all that, it needs to be not just change for change's sake, but change that moves the needle, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because they're so limited on assets, like you need to get something out of this hypothetical move, whatever it is that does move the needle. Or I would say you shouldn't do a trade, right? You shouldn't do a trade if it's not going to move the needle. You said you don't really care about the standings thing, and I think that, and they don't care either internally. What I want to say though is the standings do tie to my concern level.
Yeah,
and
that's fair.
It's more about the top of the West, and I think it's very important, not just for the Wolves, but for the Spurs, for Denver, for Houston, even LA, if they were to go on a run, to get a top 3 seed. Like that's the line of importance, because that means if you're the first, second, or third seed in the first round, you are not playing one of Oklahoma City, Denver, Houston, San Antonio, and you're able to be playing a probably Lakers, Suns, or like Memphis, whoever gets the 8th seed there. I have a concern not about this team's ability to turn it up in the playoffs and be as good as anybody. I have a concern about the Timberwolves. I would have a concern about the Thunder if they had to go through the playoffs knowing they're going to be playing one of those top teams in the first round, they're going to be playing one of those top teams in the second round, and they're going to be playing one of those top teams in the third round. By getting a top 3 seed, the first round, you're probably not going to have a hellish battle with one of those teams, and you're going to be able to do what the Wolves did 2 seasons ago and sweep the Suns, or you're going to be able to do what the Wolves did last season and beat the Lakers in 5 games in the first round. And I think that is, once we get to the playoffs, this is going to be a war amongst these teams, and durability, lack of fatigue, all of those things are going to be, I think, extremely important and defining of who goes to the second round, who goes to the conference finals, who goes to the championship there. So it's not like I'm like, oh my God, they're the 7th seed, and I think they're going to be the 7th seed or 8th seed or something. Now it's like, no, I'm still holding this team to the standard and believe that they can beat anybody in a playoff series. And I believe they can go back to the Western Conference Finals. They have enough talent for those things. But if you're going to be the 6th, even the 4th, 5th, 6th seed in this, I do not think the 4th, 5th, or 6th seed, whoever it is going to have a high likelihood of being able to achieve the goal of getting back to the conference finals there. So that's what's concerning about me, is you're digging a bit of a hole there, not an insurmountable one, right? Like, go on a 4-game winning streak, go on a 6-game winning streak, like get yourself back up to normal. But they need to be at that level, I think, come the playoffs, to be able for us to somewhat reasonably predict that they can get back to the levels in the playoffs that they've got to the last couple of seasons. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, and I deserve being called out. I think I meant more of that friend I always referenced that checks the stock price every single day. I don't care this morning that they're the 7th seed, and they didn't win last night, and it was embarrassing in front of a home crowd. But if they would have won, they would have been the 4 seed. Like, they're a half game back of the 4 seed. Now they are 3 games back of the 3 seed. So to your point, it's like you start stacking these Jazz losses and Bulls losses. So you're right there. I'm just saying, one win last night and they would have been the 4 seed. And I wonder if our conversation to like our whole podcast would have been a little different. But big picture, you're 100% right. I will just say, because it's stuck in my head, I don't agree with you. And I'm, the big optimist. I actually don't think they have enough talent to make the Western Conference Finals. And I don't know if we want to segue right into the bench stuff, because we're still talking a little bit about, like, why am I at an 8.5 right now? Like, what specifically is most concerning about this slide? I think we still need to talk right now a little bit about the defense, because I think the defense is part of that slide, and you saw it again last night. The Bulls team reminds me of just like an Eastern Conference Kings team. Like, they have some talent and they can score and they do stuff, but if you play a little defense, like, you can shut them down. And it sticks in my mind last night, like a couple Julius Randle moments. The Ant just sagging off of Kobe White in the corner was a killer. They're up 4, minute 10. Like, if Ant just plays one more possession of defense and they force a miss, they're going to win that game. There's a lot of guys, right? Dante had a miss closeout on a guy. So I think the defense is what's concerning me right now in this last week and a half of like, they're just not playing. When they're undermanned, I get it, right? Against the Spurs, against the Rockets. But when you have your full complement of guys and you let Keontae George have a career high or, you just let the Bulls kind of get whatever they want, I think that's concerning because I've always put my flag in the ground. And this has been a conversation we've all had this season. I still think their identity is defense. Now, it's waned a little bit, but I don't watch them play and think their identity is the superpower offensive team. But again, I was just kind of looking this morning on NBA.com. Like in January, I think they're still top 10 in net rating. On the season, they're a top 10 offensive rating, top 10 defensive rating. So I can understand if you're trying to be optimistic, but watching them actually just play defense. Some people go into these games too, and it's like they hate Finch, they hate Julius, they hate Ant, whatever. So you're a little biased, but then you just kind of watch it the next morning and you're amazed by how many lackadaisical closeouts, box outs, rotations. And I think that's what has led to this slide. So I just want to get your opinion on that because that's been big to me.
I think the second unit lack of scoring, the 6.5 guys, the need to add something is like a more macro thing. And it's true. Like clearly this team needs more bench scoring than they have. They got 28 points from their bench last night. 20 of them came from Nas. And that's not like an anomaly. That's kind of what bench scoring looks like for this team. But why they're losing right now, I think you're right, is just that the defense has completely lost its teeth. And there's just over the last handful of games, right? And they've just regressed in that sort of way. They're not playing with the same sort of energy that they have on that side of the floor, which is just a requirement for this team to be good. They couldn't fall into being, one of those teams where they're like, oh, we're top 3 on offense, but 13th on defense. Like that's not a winning formula for this team. Having Rudy Gobert, having Jaden McDaniels, having the funkiness of the roster, like the roster funkiness gets smoothed out when they're playing elite defense. So that's a prerequisite to winning. And internally, that's what they believe too. They know that's what this is right now, is that they've lost the defense. We talked to Rudy. It was actually before the game at shoot around yesterday, but I just asked him about the losing streak and what's behind it. So keep in mind, this is even before the loss to Chicago. Are you talking about a losing streak more, and what is it, like an electrocution of kind of like, hey, we need to wake up here a little bit?
I hope so for sure. I mean, losing one is tough, losing two, it's like, okay, we gotta get back to who we are, but we didn't do that, against Utah. So I hope after 3, there's a reaction.
When you say getting back to who we are, like what are like in your mind, what are like the bullet points of
just compete on defense, compete and be focused on that, and the rest will take care of itself. But we didn't do that.
Didn't do it. And then they didn't do it against Chicago. It's both of those things that he said, right? Like you can really tell with this team when the compete factor is up on defense right now. And we have not seen that at all. And even like defensively, even 3-5 minute period of time, these last couple of games. And the focus just isn't there. You referenced the Ant losing Kobe White in the corner at the end of the game that kind of cost him the game. Like that's just focus. Mm-hmm. And I do think that this defensive malaise and slide of late falls squarely on the two best players, or I don't know if you want to call Julius the second or third best player, but I know you watch these games back, especially once you've they lost that Utah game and I turn it on and watch it back, or when I watch back the Chicago game, I know I'm going to see Ant and Julius, and that's going to be the two main places defensively where you go, there's not effort there, both of them. And it's in the same way. Those guys are both actually, and Julius too, kind of lock up in one-on-one isolation situations. They can defend that. We know those guys can do that, but so much more of defense is doing the work off the ball. It's Julius is stopped chasing like guys off of pin downs and coming down. He does not take, it's not even that he takes the wrong route. He doesn't take routes. It looks like not wanting to hustle in that sort of way. And Ant too, it's flat-footed. It's his man cutting behind him without him even seeing it, because he's not mentally locked in there. And those guys are just so important to this team. They are, in addition to Rudy, the leaders. And what's frustrating to me about that is that doesn't seem to be like downloaded in them, that if and when they don't do this, they don't bring that effort on the defensive side of the floor, like it spreads. That malaise spreads. And so I would look to that, and both of those guys are scoring really well. And there's these individual defensive possessions where like, yes, there you go. That was great, Julius. Ant locked up here. He did put it in, but it's nowhere near consistent enough defense from those two guys, given the fact that this team, to be good, needs to be a consistent defensive team. And I do believe they'll both try harder in the playoffs. And I think those things are true, but it's this microcosm of the same thing of like, do you think it's a good idea to just rely on the idea that when the playoffs come, you're going to be able to turn it up and you're going to do those things? Because I think once you start getting tired in a playoff series, and even when and you're Julius trying to go, I do need to chase harder, it's going to be harder to chase when you have not built up that stamina of doing it consistently. Defense is not habitual for Anthony Edwards and Julius Randle. And that's why you see them sliding down the standings. And then you don't have enough talent on the rest of the roster to kind of be covering up for it in a consistent way.
A lot to digest there, but you hit on a lot of good points. And first and foremost, I can just hear the clicking of keyboards. Being like, why don't you talk about Jaden or Rudy gave up a triple double to Nurkic? Everyone on the team,
listen to the last episode. I can't talk about everybody. I'm not going to talk about all 10 guys every episode.
You know, my favorite thing, criticism, and I was like, why don't you hold Ant to the same standard you try to hold Rob? It's like, do you have a job? Like, are you employed in corporate America of like, oh, entry level people get shit on way more than people higher up? That's kind of how this works. But like, yeah, last night I thought, how the hell did Rudy Gobert not get that block on Trey Jones going to the rim with like a minute left? Right? Like that's got to be you. Like you got to clean that up. Dante has had just a couple of times where he just got bullied. I mean, Ace Bailey had him a couple of times in that Utah game. Jaden had some times where it's like, how are you letting your guy get to wherever he wants to get? So this is a fundamental organizational failure when it comes to the defense. But there's only really 6.5 guys to talk about. You know, Naz Reid gets caught flat-footed all the time. Again, they only have 6.5 guys that really hit my register. But then to the defensive part of why do they kind of just... I was talking to someone today from the team, and they did say what you just said, but you didn't say the F word. They think they have a flip or a switch. Like they think they can flip it. No, the S word, but flip it. They do think they have a switch. They do. This is something they think about in the locker room, like because they've done it back-to-back Western Conference Finals, and they're like, you know what, Finchy, the cake will bake, and we'll get it figured out, and we'll frost that motherfucker, and like we'll be good again. And I just wonder now, compared to like last year, right? Like they could flip the switch when they had 8 starters because they could do different things. And the defense is why they've lost 4 in a row, in my opinion, and in your opinion. But maybe the perfect segue into segment 2 after the break or whatever is that I wonder if it's just tiresome to be like, I got to do so many things because there's not a lot of help coming off the bench. You know what I mean? Like I have to do so many chores because no one else in this house can do it. If they had more guys that could score, Dane, right? Like I just want to plug this really quick. Like the Jake Painting he just crushed it, but he did this video over House and Growls. He's one of our good friends. In their 4-game losing skid, the non-Naz Reid bench players have scored 35 total points on 37% shooting. In 4 games, not 35 points a game. In 4 total games, they've scored 35 total points. So I do wonder for Julius and Ant if it is really hard for Julius to play that lockdown defense against Wemby, or for Ant to play lockdown defense against Keontae George, when it's like, I don't know, tell me if I'm wrong, but we have to do so much other shit and we have to score. Like our starting five has to score 92% of the points. And if Nas has a bad night, we're just going to lose.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of tied together. I don't know if it's chicken and egg, but like it's tied together of like the lack of help on the bench might be leading to, and it's inexcusable, right? But you know, the dog days of January, sometimes guys just don't try as hard, but they lost last night, in my opinion, because they just couldn't get stops. And that is effort and that's attention to detail. And those are the things now that if you don't practice when you're tired in January, it's rare that you can flip that switch come April and May, because again, you're going to be tired. You're going to be playing heavy minutes against OKC or against Houston. And yeah, that's something you train for now to be ready for battle come spring.
Yeah, let's dive into the second unit. Grab our first break here, but then we got to talk about the second unit. I watched the Jake video too. That is the issue. Back with Kyle here in a minute. Today's show is brought to you by Factor, and we know there are many of you out there who want to eat better, but you just have zero time, zero energy to make that better eating happen, because grocery shopping takes time. Meal prep can take a long time, and that's what Factor removes for you. You don't have to meal prep. You don't have to follow lengthy recipes. It removes the whole problem, and in 2 minutes, you have real food done, and you'll enjoy the food. Lean proteins, colorful vegetables, whole food ingredients, healthy fats, the stuff you would make if you had the time. There are 100 rotating meals every week with Factor, and you choose based on your goals. Healthier eating, calorie management, more protein, whatever you're actually trying to do when it comes to your food consumption. Factor is also always fresh, never frozen, and ready in 2 minutes. It's not motivation to eat better. It's eliminating the reasons you don't. I really have used Factor numerous times in the last 5 years and think you should try it out too if you are looking for a new approach to meals. Head to factormeals.com/DaneMoore50 off and use code DaneMoore50 off to get 50% off your first Factor box plus free breakfast for 1 year. Offer only valid for new Factor customers with code and qualifying auto-renewing subscription purchase. Make healthier eating easy with Factor. Today's show is also brought to you by Prize Picks, and you can now make picks on end-of-season awards over at Prize Picks. If you head over to the teams tab, and I found a few that are Wolves-related, Defensive Player of the Year. Of course, Rudy Gobert currently has the third best odds. He is behind Chet Holmgren and Victor Wembanyama. How it works for him is if you wagered $10, you could win $43 on Gobert's DPOY future. There's Sixth Man of the Year. Naz Reid had been holding down the top spot on that for a long time when I'd been checking over the course of the season. But when I looked at it today, Naz had actually just been passed up by Keldon Johnson in terms of odds. You can still wager $10 to win a little bit more now, $32 on Naz to win Sixth Man of the Year. The Teams tab is a new addition over at Prize Picks that allows you to be able to play at Prize Picks without needing to put together a whole lineup. Remember, you can also make picks against the spread over on the Teams tab now as well. If you're sitting down to just watch basketball for the night this weekend, I think it's fun to look over at Prize Picks and put $5 or $10 on something, not to break the bank, but just to have something extra on the line while you're watching. If you don't yet have a Prize Picks account, you know the drill. All you have to do is put in the promo code Dane when you sign up. You receive $50 in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. That's prizepicks.com or the Prize Picks app using promo code Dane. All right, back with Kyle Teige. Kyle, let's get into the second unit because I think that ties to the trade deadline, which is obviously very relevant conversation 2 weeks out here. You mentioned Naz, and Naz is actually playing really well. I thought Naz played great last night.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know what he has to do to close a game, but in his role of sixth man who doesn't close games, thought Naz was great. He was the spark in the fourth quarter that I thought made that close. Had some turnovers, but was clearly, as everybody else did, was clearly the offensive spark there. What I'm thinking about is the fact that Naz doesn't do that every game. You can't, very, very few players, especially ones that come off the bench, even the best six men in the league, aren't going to give you that every single night. So what if on Saturday against Golden State, Naz, who's been shooting great from three, but what if he mixes in one of his 1 for 7 from three, 1 for 8 from 3 games? What if he gets in foul trouble? What if he gets frustrated with the refs? What if it's a bad Naz Reid game? What happens? what is
They
the
lose.
recourse? Yeah, right. Yeah, you're right. Like, there's not. I was talking about Britt about this after the game in the media room yesterday. I'm like, well, who is the other guy to get you, 15 points? He's like, oh, it's Bones. I'm like, okay, Bones has done that twice this season, and Bones has been a success story this season because he came in as the 14th, 15th man and has earned the right to be in the rotation. Absolutely. But I think what we've seen with the Bones Highland experience is if you double the minutes or you double his usage, you're not necessarily doubling the production. Finch has talked about that. If we need more out of Bones, we want him to be more aggressive. We want him to be more productive. And that, that hasn't been happening because it appears at least that Bones the dial doesn't really go up that high. At least right now it hasn't been. So it's like, okay, it's not Bones. Well, it's definitely not Mike Conley. It makes you think about Rob Dillingham, who's just deeply buried on that bench, but he hasn't really given you offensive spark this season when he's gotten small opportunities. Terrence Shannon Jr. is hurt. Jalen Clark is all defense, almost no offense player. Baron J, similar in that sort of realm. This team needs another player that is competent on both sides of the ball. It just needs to be a safe player that you can put out there that can play in tandem with Nas in that second unit when Nas is going.
Mm-hmm.
If Nas isn't, it's got to be a guy who can scale up and give you more production out of that second unit. And I don't know. They don't have that option on this roster right now. And certainly don't have it healthy. That's what Terrence Shannon Jr. I think was supposed to be and has never been this season for this team. But yeah, it feels like right now in any game that Naz Reid does not play well, that this team is going to lose because there will not be more than 30 points scored by the bench in that game.
So I want to go back to the Nas and Julius thing quick, because this ties actually into the trade deadline and the roster and all stuff. If I was a member of Julius Randle FC, the fan club, I would be like, why do you constantly pick on him to not close games? And my rationale, and this became so clear last night, is that they have an option when Julius is playing poorly to close with a different guy, and that's Naz Reid. This is very traditional here in the sense of take that power forward out, put that one in. Maybe you could, if Rudy's having an off night or he's ejected himself from the game, you can close with Nas and Julius. But Julius gets picked on because they have a guy on the bench who can contribute in different ways and fill his spot. They actually don't have that at the 1, 2, 3, or 5. So I think Dante scored 20 points once since December 12th. I'm not saying he has to score, thousands of points, but I think Dante's been bad during this 4-game skid. I think Dante's been bad for a couple of weeks, but they have to close with him. So when people, I think Dante's a lightning rod for people that either really like him because of all the plus minus stuff or really don't like him because when he goes 3 for 10 from 3, what do you do out here? But they don't have any other options, right? Dante still has to play over Mike because at least Dante's going to shoot it. You're going to have to close with Ant. You're going to have to close with Jaden. So that's another reason why. I don't know if you want to get into it right now, but when you ask me, we can't just say make a trade, right? We can't just say fix this. You got to think of a specific player. I still defer to you and smarter people, but I would like a guy that can close games. I know that's still very vague, but watching Trey Jones last night.
No, I get the distinction.
You know what I mean? It's not. I don't really care if it's a bucket getter or a movement shooter ever. Can they close games? So that on a night in February or March, or God forbid a playoff game, when it's hey, Dante's 1 for 10, and it's just, we can kind of feel it in the huddle. It's not there tonight. We're going to close with Trey Jones and Ant and Jaden and Julius and Rudy, something like that, because they have, again, this 6.5 mantra that I'm coming up with is they have their 5 starters who usually give you really high production. Some nights they're bad, but usually give you good production. Naz Reid, who after those first couple games has, he'll have his down night like he did against, I think, Utah, but he'll give you really good games. But the 0.5 is maybe Jalen Clark scores 6 points. Mike Conley's prize picks yesterday, dude, was 3.5 points, and he hit a 3 early and he didn't hit it. I think organizationally, we should have talked about this earlier, but they really think that like the Terrence Shannon Jr. injury has sunk them a little bit. I think they had, I remember in the summer and stuff, they were gassing him up about 17 points a game. And then so if you watch those Terrence games earlier, like, dude, what? I don't know if the toe injury was always there or whatever, but I think he would be a guy that if he was healthy right now, I think he would be force-fed minutes because I still think they're really high on him. But he's not. He's not available. And when he's played, he has no right hand. So just to circle it all the way back, I don't know what player they're going to get. I mentioned Karis LeVert, and then I went and looked. I think he's like DNPing, or like he's been terrible. But it was that type of guy of like, okay, we have two options now, right? Like if Julius is he's in his head, we can close with Nas. Or if Rudy, again, is out, we can close with Julius and Nas. And then if Dante doesn't have it, we can close with Trey Jones, Kobe White, whatever, or any guy. But they don't have a lot of options to close games. And that was always a frustration of us in the years past of like Finch would just come hell or high water, go back to closing with the guys he started with. That was frustrating then because they had other options. Now it's more frustrating because they don't have any other options. I know against the Warriors, 4 of the 5 guys that will be out there in the final 4 minutes of the game. And then it just comes down to who's playing better. And last night, Chris Finch, I think, fucked up by not closing with Naz Reid. And yes, he had those turnovers, but I think they needed him out there instead of Julius. And that just happens. But I think it's one of the reasons they lost the game.
I feel like I've watched a lot of the Cleveland Cavaliers recently. Obviously, the Wolves played them twice a couple weeks ago and watched
Lonzo Ball trade?
No, I'm thinking about this isn't trade specific. I feel like Jalen Tyson is what we were told Terrence Shannon was going to be.
He's awesome. I too have watched him. Yes.
And it feels like that's what this team does need there is somebody again who little more opportunity. Garland or Mitchell are out there. It's like, okay, your usage is going to go up double 150%, whatever. And that's going to be okay. Who are the guys on this team who can scale up their usage and maybe even, how like Julius always plays better when Ant is out, like there'd be nice if they had a bench version of that where there is a guy. And I don't know, TJ was back around with the team. I saw him at shoot around yesterday. I saw him in the locker room before, and he wasn't wearing the walking boot. And I started thinking about, what if he is one of the answers for this? It feels like we've kind of given up on that, but right? Like we haven't got an update on him, but if he came back, I wouldn't be, it would be big. It would be big if all of a sudden you did start getting that not averaging 17 points per game, but a 17-point game from Terrence Shannon Jr. just to know that there's something else there. I think that could win them a game.
And there's a risk there though, right? Because I what I'm talking about here, but like organizationally they're waiting for him to come back. And I think he would immediately become the 7th man. Like I really do. And again, like that's not a really high bar, right? Like I might be the 8th man right now in this rotation. So I think if he can come back healthy, maybe they could put that boot on his left hand for a couple of days, so just he can only shoot with his right. But he's going to be force-fed minutes. But the risk is that it's not Thanksgiving. Like you have 13 days now, and if Terrence, we don't have an update, but if he's out for another 10 days, like if he does come back and he just doesn't have it, well, now you have no options because the trade deadline has passed. So
right.
I think he's one of the levers that they're expecting to pull once he's healthy, even though, yes, this has not been a good season for him when he did have 10 healthy toes. But I still go back to what I'm saying. Like the Mike Conley thing to me is the one that I've heard you talk about all week with other people. And I don't want to do leadership power rankings, but I'm just kind of over too, just a lot. I feel stale. I've told this off mic, like this whole season has kind of felt stale. I don't know if I just have gotten to, I too have a switch that I can flip come April and May about Western Conference Finals runs and doing all these pods, but I'm just kind of over needing older guys to lead this thing. And I know it sucks about Mike. And I was thinking about Mike when you said the Cavs, because I was like, hey, maybe I have no idea what they could trade for, but like maybe Mike needs to go for his final couple games, like a Memphis where he played, or, closer to home in Ohio. But I think that's the one that's going to be a really tough pill to swallow. And you've talked about this a lot already, but his salary versus what he's giving you, I'm just kind of graduated now past the, well, in the locker room, it's this. Because, I know he wasn't in that Brooklyn Nets game. He had like a DNP rest and they lost it. Well, he was in the Utah Jazz game and they lost it. And it's like I said, maybe he'll get a jersey retired. It sounds like they're going to start doing a lot of those now. And that's why they're going to raise some ticket prices. But I think it's over. And it sucks because I know he's a good guy and he's fun to talk to and he does a lot for them behind the scenes. But if the leadership stuff isn't equating anymore to wins, and he's got a salary that's, expiring or whatever, that is a good chunk to go get a guy that you can close with. Again, I think it's gonna be a fascinating, and this is why I said on New Year's Day, right, that like this is the biggest month of the Tim Conley era. I think it's a real big pivot point because, again, the Western Conference I think it's more wide open than people think. I don't know your thoughts on that. OKC is still a juggernaut, but depending on where you fall in the standings, like you said earlier, you can make a run. But this team, to me right now on the 23rd of January, has less talent that they can trust in April and May than they did last January 23rd. So despite how wide open it is, it's like you don't have enough ammunition for the upcoming battle. And that's going to lead to some really hard decisions. And I would expect them, I literally do, I expect them 100% to make some sort of trade.
Yeah, I feel like a trade precipitates Mike Conley stopping to play. Like I think you have to take
the keys out of Chris Finch's hands.
Yeah, well,
you know what I mean? Is that what you meant?
Yes, yeah. Well, that would be the way to stop playing Mike Conley. I think if this is your bench group and it's 6.5 good players and there's all these issues, Finch is going to continue to play him. And honestly, like probably should, because the other options aren't like that great. It's been bad, but like it makes sense that he's in the end of the rotation a little bit because it's not like there's somebody else nipping at his heels, right? And I'm saying I don't think Finch is going to stop playing him or stop playing him to the degree that he is until there's somebody out there that they feel like can reasonably replace him. And internally, they obviously don't feel that about Rob Dillingham right now. I think they have some reasonable trepidations about turning Bones Highland up into a 20 minutes a night guy. Now, I think, would I rather right now see Bones Highland play 20 minutes than Mike Conley continue to do what he's doing? Sure. But there's just not this other bench player out there that if they were given Mike Conley's minutes, that there's anywhere near a certainty that they're going to be productive. They'll probably be slightly better because Mike has been really bad, really not helping this team of late. And that's fine to say. And everybody, we're like, whenever Britt brought up Mike Conley the other day, it was like kid gloves doesn't even begin to describe how he was handling that situation. And look, I probably have a better relationship with Mike than anybody there. It's fine. And Mike's fine with the idea that like we can be hard on this. Like just as we are hard on Anthony Edwards and Julius Randle and that, like Mike Conley very, very much deserves scrutiny for what he's not doing right now, what he's not providing this team. What Mike Conley is not providing this team is costing them losses right now. Because 5 months ago, he was supposed to be the starter. He was supposed to be maybe the 5th most important player on this team. And he has been nowhere near that. And he is struggling mightily to be the 8th or 9th or 10th best player on this team right now. Like it is what it is. And that's okay. Like we can all just talk about what's happening. We can talk about the fact that Anthony Edwards did not guard Kobe White in the corner. We can talk about the fact that Julius Randle did not put in the requisite amount of defensive effort against Utah or Chicago. And for those played big roles in why they lost those games. And we can talk about Mike Conley being awful recently. He's been awful recently from a productivity standpoint. Finch, how his head works on it is there's more things that he feels like are reliable and bankable from Mike outside of the scoring, and he just goes, well, I'm going to lean on those sort of things because what's the alternative right now? Maybe Bones can shoot a better percentage than him. Maybe somebody else, Rob or whatever, can shoot a better percentage of them, score more points. But those internally are viewed as major risks as well. And so what Finch is doing by continuing to play Mike Conley is taking what he feels is a more conservative approach. It doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it, certainly hasn't made it effective. But yeah, I mean, we could just call it all what it is. Like Mike isn't playing well, and it would be nice if they didn't have to play him. But what?
Yeah, no. What other options they have?
What's the like? What? That's what I don't want Mike to play either. But if you're talking about winning on Saturday, but I don't know if you just don't play him 15 minutes and you give those 15 minutes to Bones. That does not feel like a safe bet to me that it'll be significantly better. And today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Falling Knife Brewing Company. And I want to let you know that Falling Knife has a big Wolves-related night coming up later this month where they are hosting a Wolves trade night on Saturday, January 31st. The Wolves play the Grizzlies that evening at 7 p.m., but at 5 p.m. the night begins with a collector-driven, community-focused trade night for Timberwolves and Lynx sports cards. This has been brewing at Falling Knife for a while, where a segment of the fan base has been meeting at Falling Knife to showcase sports cards. They've been at some of the live show stuff we've done there in the past. But this night is just dedicated to that community, 5 to 7 p.m. on January 31st for the trade night. And then, of course, the game against the Grizzlies will tip off at 7:10 p.m. It's a Saturday, so an easier night. Maybe to make a night out of it. This is, of course, in addition to every other game night that has the sound on and games on the projector screens in the tap room at Falling Knife. Get out to Falling Knife this week, too, for games on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. And make sure to mark down January 31st on your calendars for Wolves Trade Night starting at 5 p.m.
And this is where, again, we've talked about it a couple of times. He's a friend of ours. But this is where I thought Jake Painting and Howls and Growls nailed his latest video, is because it talks about the lack of bench production, but it really highlights. And Jake loves Mike, just like we all do. But Mike Conley's shooting under 30% in the last 10 games from 2 and under 30% from 3. And the highlight that Jake pointed out that was burned in my retinas was when Mike tried to get, I think it was like a high pick and roll with Rudy. Like, that's all dried up, by the way. Like, they don't clear out a side and let Rudy and Mike run a 2-man game because Mike's floater's been cooked. But when Mike tried to go to the rim and got his shit swatted by Reed Shepherd, those are one of those moments where, like, there's guys. I mean, Mike, you and me are all kind of in the same age. We all love fantasy football, but there's men and women listening to this in their mid-30s. They're like, I play hoops a lot, and there was that one time where this 18-year-old just swatted my shit, and that's when I knew, like, I might have to play in a different league. Like, I might have to go play with the older guys, and that's got to suck. And we do get to talk to Mike a lot more than, like, the casual fan or whatever, but he gets it. And I can't imagine that I'm sure it keeps him up at night, despite hanging with all these kids. Like, it probably just sucks to be like, I might be cooked. But I think the organization needs to realize what Mike probably knows deep down. And again, take the keys away from Chris Finch, because in Finch's defense, the cake bake analogy, I'm sure he's thinking, just give it a little more time. Just give it a little more time. And with Mike specifically, you can't give it more time because it's father time. And, like, that has come for him. He's a 38-year-old small point guard. This isn't LeBron. Like, it might just be over. And that's, we're talking about a NBA funeral here, and that sucks, but he is killing them, Mike Conley, in the minutes that he's on the court. And if you just are done with Rob Dillingham and you don't trust other things, again, it comes back to, then that guy has to go. And then you just say, hey, Joe Ingles, you got to wave that towel fucking harder. Or you got to do more behind the scenes, and we're going to get to this point. Like, I'm really close to this point. Or the guys that make a lot of fucking money could start leading, right? Like, Anthony Edwards probably doesn't need the sidekick of Pat Bev, D'Lo, Ricky Rubio, Mike Conley. More like, he's the dude. Like, you be the guy that turns it up. It can't be Mike Conley anymore. I think that has to be done. And I would, he'll be back here one day and we'll honor him and he'll sit courtside with whatever. But I would be really shocked, me, just speaking for myself, Dane, if Mike Conley is on the roster on February 7th, because that's a salary that helps you go get something. Maybe if they attach a couple of their assets or players, but they need to fill that 0.5 and turn it into a 7th guy that Chris Finch can use.
Yeah, no, you're right. I don't feel confident that he'll be on after the deadline. I don't.
And that doesn't make you wrong. Like I think that would be
I just want to say that's what my feel is, not necessarily what I would do. There is lots of salary cap reasons and financial matching of salaries that using Mike in a trade makes a ton of sense. If you want to go get a player that costs more than $10 million, you basically need to have Mike Conley or Dante DiVincenzo be in that trade, just to make the money work in that way. I don't know. It's just a gut feeling, and maybe this last run of games shifts that and gets them to be considering trading Mike in ways that they wouldn't have even thought of, months ago. But I'm telling you, I think internally their belief with Mike is we need to find a role for him. And when that happens, it'll be okay. It won't make him score 12 points a game, but it will be functional and the net rating will be positive and those sort of things. I think they're looking for a role for Mike more than they're looking to trade him. I know that frustrates a lot of people, but I'm just trying to tell you what my sense is on that.
And do you remember when we talked about that awesome clip Finch had like post game or whatever talking about roles earlier, where it's like, shouldn't you just embrace the role you have?
Yeah.
Or whatever, like a couple weeks ago? Mike Conley is playing in January 16 and a half minutes a game. So like I'm not pushing back on anything you said. You're so much more plugged in than I am, but like it's not like he's getting jerked around.
Totally.
So
well, not currently getting jerked around. I mean, obviously there's been some jerking of that. He was going to be the starter at the beginning of the season, and it's been different people that he's playing. I think the role has evolved over the course of the season, but I think you're right to say over the last couple of weeks of this bad stretch, this 4-game losing streak, he hasn't been being jerked around this last week. He's playing those 16 minutes.
And maybe we're talking like nuances here of like the role on the court of, running high pick and roll with Rudy again. Like that's dried up because why? You don't think Chris Finch likes running it, or because it's, 0.4 points per, possession or whatever. Mike Conley spotted up. I think Jake Painting had this too. Like he's like 28% in spot up threes or whatever. There's nothing there. And that's where it's like, if he had played 16 minutes against the Bulls and DNP'd against the Jazz and 5 minutes, like he's playing 16 and a half minutes a night. I think he's getting a role. I would imagine other guys on the team, like I would fucking love that. I just think again, like to the Kid Club thing, I think it's over. And, but let's stop shitting on Mike for a second, because there's other guys that you could shit on. But the trade deadline for me, and you're talking about like getting guys and stuff, what kind of player, and I've kind of thrown in there just a guy that you can trust in a closing lineup. I would
kind of like Mike Conley of the last 2 seasons.
Right. But again, like I would ask in those meetings that, Matt Lloyd and Tim Conley and all those guys have, I would ask yourselves, like we're all really smart basketball people. Do you see Mike Conley playing 16 minutes a game in the playoffs? Because if the answer is no, then I'm right. Like he shouldn't be here 2 weeks from now. And that's whatever. That's tough. But like, if you do think that you can do it and you're like, you know what, everyone's wrong. The cake is close to rising. Like we're going to, critique his role a little bit. We're going to tweak it a little bit and we're going to figure it out. Okay. But then that is the bed that you're making for yourself. And then if it fucking fails in April and May and Ant has to play 42 minutes a game in games where, by the way, like I know we've kind of gotten off the team needs a point guard conversation. Everyone's going to press the Timberwolves in the playoffs. 48 minutes. They're going to throw guys at them. And if Ant has to break that all while also playing better defense to segment one and giving you 36 points a game, and Mike Conley's not checking in, that's a failure by the front office. So I would ask yourself, who on our bench do we trust to play in round one of the playoffs? And if you're like, I don't know, advanced scouts say Rob just can't do it, then Rob should go. Because you can't preach bites at the apple and then not, not give yourself the biggest, sharpest teeth to do it. And I think that's the crossroads we're at right now is like their mouths seem closed. 2 weeks left to open it, but like can't bite the apple if you're puckered. So interesting 2 weeks coming up, I think, for this front office.
Just because we're talking about Mike's role, it's probably good context to hear what Mike has to say about his role. I asked him, again, this is before the game last night. I just asked him about his role this season. Like you mentioned, being out there when it's Nas and Jaden's time to go, that's a different role for you than last season, probably a different role than it was a month ago. What has it just kind of been like for you personally navigating your role and the fact that it kind of changes?
Yeah. It's been a challenge, to say the least, just, trying to navigate, trying to be myself, trying to work my way into the game, but understand I'm not going to get as many minutes, so you can't wait for the opportunities. You got to kind of strike when you can, and balancing who to get the ball to, balance who's hot, who's not. But in the whole grand scheme of things, not losing myself, and I think that happens far too often, where I kind of get caught up in trying to do other things for everybody else, and by the time I look up, it's time for me to get subbed out, and I'm like, dang, I didn't feel like I didn't do anything, or I didn't have enough time to affect the game like I can. So it's about me trying to continually figure it out, because there's different times when I do start or I play a little bit more, it's a little easier. When I come off the bench, I got to adjust my mindset and be able to cope with that and figure out how to be effective in those minutes.
So Kyle, when you hear that, like what is your reaction to that? Is that like eye roll? Does any of that resonate with you?
Yeah, dude, it all resonates with me. And again, like this is the part where I'm going to get crushed online. Like, and I don't care, but it sucks to get older. Like I just looked this up while you're playing that clip. Like Mike was playing 24 and a half minutes a game in January of 2025. So he is down to 16 minutes. Like they have cut his minutes. And again, like chicken or egg, I think the coaching staff is like, well, we got to play him 16 minutes because the other options are worse, right? I would lean into, now this goes to like risk aversion conversation, but like the conservative nature of this coaching staff has proven to be right more times than it's been wrong, but it's not 100%. Like I think you do got to take risks sometimes, right? Like I thought Baron J last night, just to talk about the Bulls game for a sec, 3 minutes in, it was brutal. Pull him. But at least he got in, and like this is not a Baron J night. But then against the Bucks, it's like, okay, that's a good performance. I just don't know if there's anything left in the Mike Conley tank, because the things that you and I or Jace or whatever were predicting before the season started, like, well, at least he can spot up, right? Like at least he can chase guys. That's all. Like his strengths are now weaknesses, and
so,
if his
I would
Did I
say
not
he
answer?
can still chase. I would say he can still chase guys, and he's definitely not shooting it. But do you think that Mike like can't and won't be able to shoot for the rest of the season? I push back on those two things, because I think in theory he should be able to still be a solid chase defender, and he should still in theory be able to be a solid catch and shoot guy. I see defensively the chasing stuff not being the issue. I see it when he's overpowered by bigger guards. That's a major defensive issue there. And yes, the shooting numbers are terrible, as you talked about with Jake. We've talked about on here. But the shooting one to me feels mental. Like that isn't a physical denigration sort of thing, or it's rare that guys just fall off as just open shooters. And that's why if I'm holding on to a little bit of, if Mike is still going to play, which I kind of think he's going to, and it gets better, I think it's because actually that shooting piece of it can come back. And then defensively, he still knows where to be and is a good chase defender. All the other stuff is a problem. Can't do anything from 2-point range. That's dead. I hear that. I think that's gone. That's never coming back. But I don't know. It would be weird if the shot just completely disappeared, right? Like that isn't typically something that just disappears with age. That disappears with a lack of confidence. And maybe the confidence is shattered because the role is different and the shots haven't been going in. But I don't know. The shooting part is weird to me. The shooting part and the way it looks, he doesn't look like, watch him take his most recent 5 3-point shots and then go to the first 5 3-point shots he took of the season. They literally look different. He looks hesitant. That piece seems mental to me.
So then to answer your question, which I did a poor job earlier, I'm rolling my eyes. Because when Rob Dillingham took a shot and missed it, he got pulled. And that would fuck up your confidence. Yep. Again, the big number here is 16.7. Mike Conley's not getting jerked off the court, taken off the court, if he misses a three-pointer. He gets to play 16 minutes. So I think a fun little game here, quick, would be, and again, you're right, he can still chase guys. But let's just compare like T-chart, Jalen Clark and Mike Conley. I think Mike Conley shooting 33% from three this season and Jalen Clark shooting 29%. If I was the coach and I get a lot of shit wrong, I would just say Jalen Clark gives me more things right now because he's not going to get bullied by bigger guards. Jalen Clark will get an offensive tip back. He has that one move where he kind of throws himself into someone's body driving baseline to get that and one. He might get you an Alvarado steal, but he's probably not going to make any threes. But again, on the Mike stuff, it's like, is it because he's in his own head, or is it because and maybe you're right, or is it because he's 38 and chasing guys now just takes a little more of a toll on his body and does fuck up his shot mechanics. Fair. So, but this is the type of stuff, right, that I know with a bullet that they're talking about behind the scenes. I think the ceiling right now of a bench player in Mike Conley is lower than Jalen Clark. And maybe that's really spicy, but I just think Jalen Clark is going to give me more loose balls diving on the ground. He's going to give you, more cuts. Mike Conley's going to give you more last 4 minutes. He's not going to throw the ball out of bounds. He's going to help with some of your late game stuff. But if he can't make threes, why not play the pit bull that also can't make threes? That will at least give you some more things. So it is,
but Kyle, it's about dilemma. Like what do we think their 3-point shooting is going to be going forward? If those are the numbers, 29%, 33%, obviously that seems very close. But like for the rest of the we basically have the whole second half of the season. What do you think Mike Conley shoots from three? And what do you think Jalen Clark shoots from three? If you're predicting for the rest from this point on, starts at 0 for 0.
Do I think Mike Conley will shoot a better percentage? Yes.
What percentage do you think he will shoot?
I don't know, man. He shot 16% in December. I think Mike will shoot 35% from three. And I don't think Jalen Clark will get to that number. Yeah.
But to your point, I'm just setting it up to be like, okay, there's a delta between Jalen and Mike in terms of shooters. Mike is a better shooter than Jalen Clark. He has been thus far this season, and he very likely will be a better 3-point shooter the rest of the way and open catch and shoot shots. But that doesn't make what you were saying wrong, because all the other stuff that Jalen Clark can do from a defensive standpoint, an offensive rebounding standpoint, a driving to the basket and finishing standpoint, like Mike cannot, those things are not going to get better. And Jalen Clark is going to be better than him very likely in all of those areas for the rest of the season there. Do you get what I'm saying though? Of like, it needs to make up the difference in the shooting. And it certainly has been of late. It's like, if the answer is Jalen Clark, I just hate the question,
No, and I get that.
Which goes back to the trade deadline and needing somebody else, something else. So it's ideally it would be neither of them right now, right? Neither of them are playing, but
yeah,
here we are again.
I would love to be like sitting in my Minneapolis home when it's -30, being like, you guys did 15 minutes on who you trust more, Mike Conley or Jalen Clark. But the one thing that the one Mike Conley thing though, that in my little imaginary T chart that Jalen Clark gets, and this has always been a concern of mine, and I've said it different ways about a gap year or the three young guys or Baron J. Like I watched Rockets Sixers last night. And the league has pivoted from small ball to more bigs or whatever. But the one thing that I was thinking about this when they lost to the Jazz, like the Jazz are fucking bad and they didn't have Markkanen, but they have a bunch of athletes. Like Ace Bailey's just athletic.
Mhm.
The Wizards have athletes. Like the worst teams in your brain have athletes. And I don't think Mike Conley's an athlete anymore. And I think Jalen Clark is an athlete. So if it was a 50-50 and I was like, which one are you going to take? I'm at the point now, come playoff time, when Amen Thompson plays 39 minutes. Like, I just need more athletes. And that is the point where there is there's no stats for that. There's no, PER, but I think Mike has lost his athleticism, and that's totally fine, man. Go look at his stats. He has like 19 lines in Basketball Reference. He's been in the league for almost 2 decades. But that to me is the deciding factor of come playoff time when benches actually, like, I've seen people be like, you need to trade Julius for 4 bench guys. No, like you don't need 9 guys in the playoffs. You need 7, I think. But you don't have 7. And I just don't see Mike Conley, even if he shoots 38% from 3 on a couple spot ups, having enough volume to make up for the lack of athleticism. I mean, that Reed Shepherd thing, I know I'm just hammering right now. That was wild. Like Reed Shepherd is like my height almost, or your height. And he had Mike in a body bag. And that's going to come April and May.
And again, we're not going to pin down an answer exactly, but when you talk about the trade deadline, like maybe that's when we talk about archetype of player. Maybe athlete is the answer there, and trading. I think
it is. I think it is 100% for me. I think this team with Terrence Shannon Jr. as an asterisk, because we don't know, and then Baron J as a. I mean, I was going to ask you this if they would have won a couple games, but like, do you think Baron J plays in the playoffs? I know this is early, but right now, the answer is probably no. It's unfair to you 3 months from now, but
yeah, I mean, I don't think he will, but I know this is a old thing I've been saying. It doesn't make sense to me why Nas isn't playing the 3 more. I don't get it. I don't get it. Like,
are those
why
two tied together? Then like if Nas plays the 3, then you're playing a little more Baron J. Okay, cool.
And then I think you're going to get competent Baron J more often than you're going to be getting competent Conley or Clark, right? What are I don't get what Finch is so scared of there. I don't get what he's so scared of with the Nas at the 3. Like, he knows, and he knows when Bones isn't going to be giving them something. That was the Utah game. He only played him in the first half. Why is the recourse then in the second half not to be playing Nas at the 3 and just to be cutting away some of those wing minutes? He's like their 5th best player. I don't get it. I think Nas should be playing more, period. I think they have a problem on the wing, period. They don't have enough scoring from their wings, period. Like, do Nas. Why not? And then play Baron J at the 5 a little bit more. Like, why can't Baron J be the 7th best player? And then you can't say the 6.5 thing anymore. I know he didn't play well last night, but it was 3 minutes. I asked Mitch about it. He goes, those weren't even real rotation minutes. It was just 3 minutes, whatever. Like, play it. I don't understand the lack of Nas playing on the wing more often, especially given that he sucks at the 5. So what are we? The Reed Randle minutes are disaster defensively. That's not going to work in the playoffs. We know that. They know that. Like, I don't.
I think we came to a conclusion.
Yeah.
I think we did. I think this has been therapeutic for me at the hour mark here. I would just get another athlete. And I know that's also, if we were sitting in on the meeting, like, oh, you just want us to get an athletic player. That's nice and broad. I was just thinking of this because I did watch a quarter of Nets games. Terrence Mann never became what he was supposed to become, but he still's like athletic, even at 29. Like, he had like a 6 rebound, 6 assist game the other night. I don't think he scored double digits since like 6 years ago, but I think they need more athletes, because if you look at the standings, which, coming full circle now, I care about the standings now. The top of the West has athletes in their starting lineup and on the bench. They just throw athletes at you, right? Like, the Clippers even the Clippers are starting to play some of their younger guys. If you watch a Clippers game, they trust some of their younger guys now, because I feel like the athletes have done what Baron J did for Rudy, like young puppy with the older dog. So Mike Conley, again, we did 20 minutes of being pretty harsh on him, but I think it's at that point now where he's like he's not the biggest trade chip, right? Come the deadline, but the financials are pretty enticing if paired with a Rob Dillingham or whatever picks you have left in the cupboard. So they need more guys out there that can do stuff. And hopefully, Dane, to segment one, that will help Ant and Julius do less stuff, especially offensively. Because again, none of this matters. Like, don't dig a bigger hole for yourself in terms of assets and draft picks on stuff if Ant and Julius aren't going to play defense. But I think they think in their brains, come round one, we're going to turn it on. And Julius is going to look like he did against Wemby for a possession. And Ant's going to look like he has always in the playoffs. But if those guys can turn it on come April, I don't want them to have to be out there with Mike Conley, who I don't think can turn it on anymore. Yeah.
They need they need an athlete. They need more ball handling, and they need, if Mike is going to be cut out of the rotation, then they need another like veteran presence out there. If you could string those things together, you could get a more athletic player who is a high basketball IQ guy who's going to be competent, and you would feel okay with playing in the playoffs, and they could approach that maybe closing the game for them type of thing. Like, yes, that's the answer. That would make a big difference going forward here. The difficulty of acquiring that's the question. Not just because it's difficult to get players in general, but because the Wolves are in a weird spot from a salary cap standpoint, and they're a weird spot from not having assets standpoint, and they're in a weird spot from not really having a lot of players who are out of the rotation right now, making enough money to be able to put together to trade for that type of player. So yeah, it's time for Tim Conley to go to work. It's time for Tim Conley to go work. I don't think it's an easy test for him to find the answers to, but if you want to win the championship this year, you want to win a round in the playoffs this year, it feels like a requirement to find at least some of these things that we're making a long list of this group needing.
And this is my last thing, but a couple weeks ago, I joked about, you mentioned something about going out and finding someone, but also having like veteran leadership or a trusted person on the court for those late game situations. Everyone remembers the Suns meltdown and then the Kings meltdown. And it was like they didn't have guys out there that really understood the 2-minute drill of protecting the ball and executing. And I joked about like, hey, Chris Paul, right? Like, he's available because he'll give you that on-court floor general QB1. I mean, I don't know if Chris Paul was ever in their crosshairs, but I've actually now moved past that because I'm back on the athleticism thing. I don't think Chris Paul and all the stuff he's learned and all the untucked jersey rules that he could get you, like, they need another athlete out there. And 2 years ago when Ant didn't have the 3-ball and maybe it hurt his overall game, he went into the summer and he learned it. And then when he lost to OKC because he just didn't have that mid-range as part of his whole arsenal, he went into the offseason and learned it. And I think this team might lose in the playoffs, round 1, 2, or 3, because they realize that the most important guys on the court aren't leading. And maybe that will be the summer of learning of, maybe an education class on leadership. But I want them to go get good basketball players and put more of the leadership power rankings on Ant and Julius and Jaden. It's time for those guys to lead the team. And then the front office to get more help for them in a production standpoint. I don't care if the guy go.
Do you think they can? Do you think those guys can do the leadership, or do they just need to do the leadership? You're saying they need to, which I think we all agree with that. And that'd be great to not have to play Mike Conley for that reason. I don't think we know that they can.
I think twofold. One, optimistic Kyle would say every time you doubt or people doubt Anthony Edwards, he does it. Conversely, if they never can, like if Ant, Jaden, and Julius, or Ant, Jaden, and Nas, I guess, the 3 core guys or whatever, if they can't level up in terms of leadership on the court, then we're probably going to have to start having real different conversations. Because at some point, like, Ant is one of the 5, 6 best players in the league, and he does everything well. But if he can't find that last leadership step of, whatever, Giannis, Jokic, all those guys, then I think the ceiling is shorter. And I don't think that's true. I think he can, but I wonder, if you and I always went out together and I always was the responsible one to drive us home, why would you ever not have another beverage?
That's fair. Yeah.
Right. So at some point, I talked about the 4 years of college with, again, I said it's like Rubio and D'Lo and Pat Bev. I think Ant either needs to teach the class or he can't be at the university anymore. And I think he can teach the class. But how is he going to learn those things in late game execution, inbound passes and stuff, if Joe Ingles is always there to save the day, or Mike Conley is always there to save the day?
Right.
That's how I would be approaching the rest of this season and the playoffs. And again, a very important trade deadline for a team that cannot, under any circumstances, asset deprived or not, sit on their hands.
I don't think it's going to come this year. That would be my prediction. I'm not saying it can't come. I don't think it's happening this season, and it makes me think about the value of to throw another thing into the trade deadline mix of getting a veteran presence.
And maybe that's the second book that Chris Hines, right? Like in the summer of 2026, after not having execution in the final 4 minutes against OKC, and stormed off the court, and then all summer he had dinners with Kevin Durant and Chris Paul and all John Stockton or whatever. I don't know. Maybe that's what he does learn this summer. And maybe that's what we're talking about 6-12 months from now. But I think it's time because, again, coming back to they don't have enough guys right now to put around their two best players, Ant and Julius, to make their lives easier. And if their lives are easier, maybe that is the final straw for them to be like, okay, now you have to do the easier stuff in terms of mental rather than physical. So.
You got anything else?
No. Stay warm, man. The sun is shining here. It's beautiful on the West Coast. It's only 25 degrees, but sounds like it's a little colder where you are.
Here, but with a minus sign in front of it.
Good football weekend coming up. Other than that, like I said, just stay warm. I know it's nasty, man. That's nasty. My dad's like, it feels like minus 41 in Grand Forks, North Dakota. I was like, I don't even know what that means.
I want to look up what the feels like is right now because there's negative 21 when I came over here this morning.
If there's any meteorologists
negative
67
11
minutes into this podcast, I would like to know how that's calculated. Like finally one day I looked up. Yeah, I looked up one day, like how does John Hollinger back in the day calculate PER? I was like, okay, that kind of makes sense. The feels like thing is that's just like a skin thing. Like, fuck, it's cold. It feels like it's negative 100. So that's what we put in the weather app. Do we still have weather apps? I don't really know. But yeah, happy Friday. Happy Friday to everyone listening. Be safe out there. Literally, if you got dogs or kids or whatever, I know it's tough to get outside. So you can kind of go stir crazy being in the house during these times of winter. So again, as always, focus on yourself. Try to get some breaks. Have some fun with it. It'll get warmer. The lakes will thaw.
And 2 against the Warriors, who don't have Jimmy Butler anymore. It's still
Huge
a good
games.
position.
Huge games.
Yeah, but like that you can take care of business. And when you and I get back on here next Friday, like make us look stupid for this episode.
Mike Conley 32-point game.
That's 4 in a row. That's four losses in a row, and something they haven't done in a long time, which does show that this team, when they start fumbling, they do normally course correct. That's been something that team 2 years ago was great at, right? Never losing 3 in a row, but it has largely been a truth of this team that when it feels as bad as it feels right now, they typically quickly pivot off of that and make that feeling seem stupid. They need that right now. And I think, and that's why I don't mind us having this tone of conversation, because we know what the goals are of this team. We also know what the high level of this team is. We've seen it. We saw it 2 weeks ago, this team is not far removed from showing extended flashes of being a team who can beat anybody in the Western Conference. I'm telling you, man, I go back to the thing we talked about at the top when it is the standings. It's like, you want to go somewhere in the playoffs this season, Timberwolves, Rockets, Spurs, whoever, you better be a top 3 seed. Because I don't think anybody is going through that war of playing a good team in the first round, good team in the second round, good team in the third round, and going to the championship. I think a prerequisite to going to the championship in the Western Conference is playing the Suns or the Grizzlies or the Clippers or something in round 1 so you can take care of business there. And for this Wolves team to put themselves in that position to be a top 3 seed and not needing to play Houston or San Antonio in the first round, they got to go on a run right now like they did last season at about this time or right after the trade deadline. This team needs that right now, and probably to do so needs some bolstering at the trade deadline, and we'll see what that looks like in the coming weeks here.
That's a great point. I would not be pounding the table for a trade. The worst thing you can do is make a trade if you don't have a chance. I would not be pounding the table for a trade if I didn't think that this team had a ceiling to go do more than they've done the last 2 years.
Right.
But the point of this very somber kind of conversation Friday is that they don't have enough ammo right now to do it. So you got to go add a little bit because it is wide open. You can go not get gentlemen swept, right? You can go win a Western Conference Finals, but it will involve making some level of transaction, in my opinion.
He's Kyle Teige. You guys are following him on Twitter at Kyle Teige. You can hear him on the show every Friday and sometimes twice a week when that works out to happen as well. The next episode will be Monday morning with Jace Frederick. We'll talk about the first of the two Warriors games, and then we'll have a full week next week. Got Chris Hine coming back and a handful of games. So we'll keep rolling with this thing, and hopefully next time we record, they will not be in the midst of a losing streak. I appreciate you coming on, Kyle. Until Monday with Jace, he's Kyle. I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah. Hope you dancing like